then all of a sudden his eyes opened and they just lit up. He sat straight up in his bed and was like reaching towards the ceiling. My parents and I are looking at each other like, oh my gosh, he is seeing something right now.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God, we see his hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention. I am your host, Trapper Jack. And if you're new around here and you're wondering, gee, I wonder how a guy gets a name like Trapper Jack. So Trapper, why don't you tell him?
Well, obviously all the good names were taken. The other thing, I never wanted to be Philip Keller. I always liked being the anonymous guy. That was always good. So I used my middle name for a while, Philip James. Then I went to Chris Michaels. That name was given to me. I'm in Seattle. They give me Jack Elliott because there's an Elliott Bay. I moved to Pittsburgh so I can meet my wife and doing the morning show. I get off the plane and they say, okay, the staff voted on who you're going to be. and they did this because they wanted to make me memorable quickly. Standing before you right now could have been Diamond Jack, the Panama Jack, Slim Jack, Captain Jack, Cracker Jack. But because of the MASH series, Trapper John MD, all that, it was kind of like that's where the Trapper thing came from. Trapper, how did you get blind? Well, I'll tell you, I sat too close to the TV. I don't know what happened. I think it was Mary Tyler Moore. To be honest with you, she got me. She got me. Also, when I come to these kinds of things, sometimes people who are unaware, they listen to me on the radio, and people sometimes come up and say, I listened to you for years. You didn't sound blind. No, I'm not quite sure. I know, I'm not quite sure, I was ahead of my time. I identified as being able to see, but.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I am excellent. This is Sarah. She was at the talk with her mom and her aunt, and she describes herself as...
I'm one of the classic millennials, so I'm 29. Stories that were, from thousands of years ago that just were kind of hard to relate to. I always wanted to believe everything, but it's kind of hard to wrap your head around sometimes. And but seeing you and hearing you talk about just the miracles that are happening today and things like that, it's just like, wow, yeah, it really makes you open up and think about like, this is definitely a living, breathing thing that's still happening now. After seeing how it's still a living thing and how he's still so present in our lives if we're just willing to listen, that's kind of what makes me want to go back. And just, I want to start going every Sunday again, because I'm like seeing how it is so real and still happening.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Sarah. What do you want to share with me? What?
Well, I guess the story that kind of came to mind when we talked, which is funny because previously I would have thought of it as a ghost story probably, but then I actually said this to my dad when I saw him on Father's Day. I'm like, I'm realizing that these so many stories that I thought were ghost stories are actually God stories. And it's just like, so the story that I have has to do with when my grandpa was passing away, which was my dad's dad. We had gotten the call that the end was probably near and that we should probably come up and say our goodbyes if, we wanted to do that. And, I'm an only child and my dad's an only child. So there's only 3 of us that went up there because my grandma, his wife, had passed away. This was 2014. She passed away in 2011, I believe. So really it was just the 3 of us. So we went up there and we're walking down the hall to his room. And he was like, when we're walking straight, his was right in front of us. And a nurse comes out of the room. And she looked much different from all the other nurses. She was probably in her, I would say like mid 40s, early 50s. And yet this was 2014 and she was wearing one of those little white nurse dresses with a blue cardigan and one of those linen hats, like that they wore way back.
Old stuff when nurses wore little hats. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, and I was just like, I don't think I had ever seen a nurse dressed like that before or after that day. It was just kind of striking to see a woman that was not even old to be wearing an outfit like that, you know? And my dad stops like dead in his tracks and he looks at my mom and I with these wide eyes and we're like, "What's up?" He goes, "That is the same outfit that my mom used to wear to work every day." 'Cause, my grandma was she was a Pearl Harbor nurse, and then when she came home, she worked at, Cryle Hospital, which is now Tri-C West, and, he's like, I remember growing up, her always wearing this blue cardigan to work, and then she'd have her white dress and that little linen hat on, and he's like, "And that woman even had, like, the same haircut as my mom," like, he's like, "That looked just like her." And, so right away, we're all like, "Wow, that's wild." And so we go in the room and we see that that woman is his like head nurse of the day and stuff. And um, he had been comatose for probably a week or two, so we were really just sitting by him and kind of talking to him. And it's always hard. You see his chest starting to, he's taking breaths slower, and um, that nurse comes in again and she just kind of like goes right to his like IV bags and stuff, adjusts some things, looks at his numbers and just walks out. Like not a ton of bedside manner, but it
No
reminds
words spoken, no words.
right.
Okay.
And like not really even eye contact, but
But your dad is looking at her like, what?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, we were kind of taking it all like she's acting very militant, and I don't know how my grandma was as a nurse. I know how she was as a grandma. She was super loving, super religious. Um, but I know that when I was a kid and I'd get hurt at her house, I was like, I'm not telling grandma because she's just gonna douse it in alcohol and put band-aids on it. And I'm like, I'd rather just suffer with with the boo boo on my own.
You didn't want the alcohol sting? Didn't want that?
No,
Or
no.
back in the day, something called mercurochrome was put on those things too. Yeah.
But so then as the, time of his passing was coming closer, all of a sudden, like his breasts were getting so shallow that we're like, was that the last one? And um then all of a sudden he like his eyes opened and they just lit up. He sat straight up in his bed and was like reaching towards the ceiling. And my parents and I are looking at each other like, oh my gosh, he is seeing something right now. And then he looks back, he looks at my dad, and then he looks at my mom, and then he looks at me. He looks back at my dad, and my dad just looks at him and he's like, "It's okay, Pop. If it's your time, you can go, And he grabbed onto him, and then my grandpa just kind of fell back, and that was it. And then my parents send me, they're like, "Go get tissues." I'm like running through the halls of the hospital. I'm like, this probably looked terrifying to everybody else because I'm just like sobbing because he was like a second father to me. When I wasn't with my parents, I was with them. They were my next door neighbors. So um they raised me as much as my parents did. So I'm just running down the halls. I'm like, he's gone. I need tissues. People are probably like, oh my gosh. But it was just such a beautiful moment. And it's really like it I can't believe I kind of had forgotten about it. And then after hearing your stories and stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, like that was definitely something there that happened. And it was beautiful.
Wow. What a gorgeous exit. What a gorgeous
Yeah.
exit.
It was so peaceful, really.
But to acknowledge you all, and we always hear about these last second rallies sometimes. This wasn't quite that. This is something a little beyond, but to acknowledge heaven, if you will, and
Mhm.
then dad, mom, you, back to dad, the final
Mhm.
hug. Wow.
Yeah. It was
What a gift just to remind us all, you guys and us, to remind us all this is not where it ends.
mhm. I know, and it was beautiful from I mean, my mom has always been like just not a doubt in her mind, whereas like my dad and I we're both always kind of like well, we got to believe in something. This is what we were told to believe, and sounds good, you know. So I think it was like that was a message that he really needed too, you know, to from his own dad, who, you know, it was a great way for God to send a message to us. That's for sure.
And also the message um, that your grandmother was
Hmm.
there too, part of the welcoming committee. Here's grandma. There's
Hmm.
no way someone should be dressed like that. You know, there's just no way.
Right? No, no way. It was crazy.
How old were you then?
Then, well, what, 2014? So that 23, I'm not, math is
Minus
not my
nine,
strong suit.
20
Yeah,
ish, 20 ish.
20-ish. Yeah, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
I know. And there was another small story that's really more my mom's story than mine, but she, when her dad passed away, I want to say like 2017, that number seems to come to my mind for some reason. So when my grandpa passed away, my mom was having a really hard time at work one day. She is a hairdresser, and so in between her appointments, she had gotten a text on her phone, and it was from some nonsense. It was actually from an email. I I wrote it all down because I was like, I wanted to be able to say it just how it happened, but it was from like an email address. But then the message was parentheses your needs, another parentheses, and then it said no worries underscore CASIM period IR, which her dad's name was Casimir, and it was spelled CASIMIR, which is also a unique spelling for that name. So my mom was just like, oh my gosh. She's like Googling on the computer, like, what is this email address? Who sends this? And she replied to the text. She's like, who is this? And no reply. And she was searching on the internet and stuff, and no results for that. And she's just like, wow.
But his name is in it. Cryptic, but kind of like no worries. It's okay.
Yeah, your needs. And then after that, it says, no worries, Casimir.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Did she
Yeah.
save it, or did she save the text, or did she
She
just
has
write
like
it
a
down?
screenshot and
Oh,
everything. So
screenshot.
she had sent me that. And I wrote it out in my notebook here because I was
Yeah.
like, I want to be able to say it just how it was. But,
Boy, what did that do for her?
oh gosh. I mean, she already believed, but she was just like, I remember she was texting everybody on the planet and showing everybody, you know, she's like, look at this. And she has two sisters. So she's like running and showing them and everything. And they're all kind of like, wow, that is crazy. You know, that's wild. But my mom knew from the second, you know, she was like, this is God telling me, or this is even my dad telling me.
Wow. Wow.
Hmm.
And now, we've had some other cases too on the episodes where somebody will receive a text, somebody passes, and immediately, you just get these strange. I remember one, I think it was on the 40th day. There's a 40-day mass in Catholic masses where after somebody passes, after 40 days, you have a mass. And I think that's when
Hmm.
the mom and dad went to the mass for their son who had died. And I mean, a couple of things happened. I mean, he's getting a text. It's actually the last text his son had sent to him, which just said, I love you, Dad. It just
Hmm.
pops up on his phone again out of nowhere. And then they're at the mass, and during the time of the mass where you mention those who have deceased, who have died, and the son's name is mentioned, the lights in the church flicker twice. I mean,
Oh my
they're getting all
gosh.
kinds of messages. I'm here. I'm fine. I'm good. The whole thing. So
Yeah.
beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah, God is good. God, and I shouldn't say tries. God doesn't try to do anything; He just does. But He makes us. He gives us comfort.
Hmm. Absolutely.
In this veiled world that we live in, He still reaches out and cuts through the veil a bit and lets us know. That's neat. I mean,
Yours.
and to your point too, also that these were ghost stories, and now they're not ghost stories. This is just God talking to us.
Yeah, I think I'm like very much at just the beginning of all of it, you know, like I've just kind of been reinvigorated with everything. So I'm like listening to all these stories. I've been going back and listening to your podcast from the beginning. And my husband was teasing me. He was like, because I'm on summer break since I'm a teacher. So Tuesday and Wednesday night I was up until like 2 in the morning watching things on YouTube and everything like that. And my husband's like, wow, I came home to the Vatican today, and which is really funny because he's Protestant. So
God
we believe
does.
in the same thing at the end of the day. So
All in the same team. So,
I agree.
so that it's very, and I love the fact that you and your mom and your aunt were there, and if some things were awakened during that time, that's what I am about. That's what we are about here, because that's what woke me up. Same in the same exact same way. This stuff
Yeah.
came out of left field. That everything we read about is still happening. Maybe what we do here is to go back to the talk that Sarah attended, and just play a couple of minutes here, just a few minutes, of what started kind of this turnaround again of the is now, of what God is doing is now. Not just as it was in the beginning, but is now. Trapper, why don't you tell that story?
2 months ago, yesterday, I woke up to words. The words were, light a candle. That's it. Light a candle. And I'm lying in bed going, light a candle? And it was said so softly, and I thought, that's you, isn't it, Mary? I think that's you, because I barely caught it, and she's softer. Light a candle. Well, how do you light a candle? You can light a candle with a match. I can put my candle into another candle and light a candle. I can have my candle already lit, and I can light your candle, right? And then you can light a candle, and you light, and you light, and you light. And that's where she was taking me to, light a candle, because the previous Saturday and Sunday was Easter weekend. And we had been at the Easter Vigil Mass at St. Mary's in Hudson because Beth and I were sponsoring a friend of ours into the church. Carolyn, our friend, we were sponsoring into the church. And you know, you've been to Easter Vigil Mass, right? You know what this looks like. The darkened church, right? Then the Easter candle comes in from outside and the fire pit and all that. The light of the world comes in and begins lighting the candles. And is it not just the most beautiful sight in a church to see this light of the world, if you will, just glowing throughout the church? And we got to witness that. But I knew what Mary was saying to me. Mary knows what I know, doesn't she? Of course she does. She knows what I know. She led me to what I know. So she knows that I know that when I think of that Easter Vigil Mass, she knows that I know that's a reenactment. That is a reenactment of something that is going to be happening the upcoming Saturday. We were in between the 2 weekends of our Easter and Orthodox Easter, right? So I'm in the middle of 2 Easters here. So coming up Saturday, it's their turn for Holy Saturday, Easter Vigil Masses and all that. Only Mary knows what I know, and she knows what I'm thinking, and that is that upcoming on that Saturday is something spectacular that happens in Jerusalem at the tomb of Christ. When the Greek Orthodox patriarch, the patriarch is headed for the tomb, and he's stopped by Israeli authorities every year, by the way. And he's patted down every year. He's patted down. Why? What are they patting him down for? Making sure he doesn't have something that can either start a fire, ignite a fire, or be ignited. He's okay. They've already checked out the tomb to make sure there's nothing in there that can be ignited or ignite. And the patriarch goes into Christ's tomb on Holy Saturday, and he kneels down and he begins to pray. And fire comes out of the stone where Jesus was laid. Every year since the church began. Every year. He's holding 33 candles in each hand. They bunch them. God lights his candles. He comes out and begins lighting other people's candles. Oh, by the way, there's a different property to this fire. It doesn't burn. For the first 30 minutes, it doesn't burn. You see videos of people doing this and all that, and they're putting it in their hands and their beards and all that. It's called the Miracle of the Holy Fire. Miracle of the Holy Light is what the name of this is. Feel free to Google it once you leave. Not right now. Because you're tempted. Hold on a second. So he comes out. So it doesn't burn for like the first 30 minutes. And they're lighting candles. There's a candle here, candle there. But also another property of this fire is it goes shooting across the church. So there's 1,000 people inside that place. And the light is, I'm told by people who have been there, it's like a laser light shield. Candle flames flying across. They're going up the walls 30 feet to light the lamps. This whole place is aglow. Bells are ringing. People are cheering. It's crazy. Have you ever heard of this before? Okay. Other than from me having heard this, by applause, applaud if you have heard of this before. Now, by applause, you've never heard this before. Does this seem right? No. This fire is then put onto jets. This fire is now sent out to countries all around the world and churches around the world and come even to here. And so that way they can get it to cities and churches so that the next morning, Easter morning, when the congregation shows up, the fire that is lighting the candles has come from the tomb of Christ and been lit by God himself. Why don't we know this? Isn't that amazing? If Easter is the feast of all feasts, which it is, right? It's an octave, it's 8 days, right? This is, without the resurrection, there is no Christianity, right? Without the resurrection, there has to be a resurrection, otherwise there is no Christianity. This is kind of a big deal. So here we have the sign of the resurrection, the sign, fire coming out of rock once a year, and always at that same time and at that same prayer, and always in that tomb. Every year since the beginning of the church. Popes have written, by the way, this used to be our miracle. The church used to be one, wasn't it? And then we got a divorce. Somebody gets the house, somebody gets the dog, somebody gets the car, and okay, you get Jerusalem, you get the tomb, you get Rome, here we go. So, and now we're doing reenactments, wonderful, fabulous, great. But we're not pointing towards that sign. Tell me, this is what's killing me. Seems to me, if I ran the world, in my world, the next day, every Greek Orthodox priest, every Catholic priest, every bishop, cardinal, pope, every Protestant minister in the world should they not be going to the pulpit to say, it happened again? Should they not? This is a sign of the resurrection. We're trying to convince the world that Jesus is real, that he lived, he died, he rose. Here is the sign. You can watch it on YouTube. I do. He goes in, he says some prayers, he comes out. There was one year I made such a jerk of myself. It was during COVID when the church was shutting down and all this, and we were calling ourselves non-essential and all this crazy stuff, right? And I said, boy, God's going to be mad. He's not going to do it this year. He's not going to do it. And I forecast it's not happening this year. Oh, yeah? It happened. It still happened. It still happened. Of course it's still going to happen. That's God being God. Crazy. Why is it so secret? Is this a secret? Don't you want the world to know that Jesus rose? You know? As it was in the beginning. No, I'm sorry, there's no is now anymore. Sorry, we don't have any is now. Now, most priests, I've told this to, did not know this happens. This isn't like a conspiracy thing. It's out there. This is not hidden from anybody. Talk to any Greek Orthodox friend, they will tell you. By the way, Father, have you ever heard this before? No. Thank you. That's not unusual. We're not talking about it. Why aren't we talking about it? This is now. This is one of the greatest, biggest is nows out there, is it not? And we have placed, somebody has placed this invisibility cloak over is now, a huge one that speaks of the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Mary knows that I am going to be standing here. Back when this happened, this would have been April, I'm thinking the 12th. 10, 11, I think so. She knows I'm going to be speaking at Holy Angels long before I do. So back on that day, Mary knows I'm going to be speaking here on this day. And she knows what the gospel is going to be today. What is the gospel? Jesus says, no one lights a lamp and hides it under a basket. Isn't Mary good? Isn't Mary good? No one, I was going to say idiot, no. No one who would ever light a lamp or candle, and then hide it under a basket. And then the gospel goes on to say, no, we need to see that light throughout the room, throughout the church. The whole church needs to be illuminated, right? And we have something under the invisibility cloak. It's amazing. What's Mary trying to say to us? Why? Here's what she's saying to us. This is the tip of the iceberg. This is the tip of the iceberg. I could stand here for hours and tell you miracle stories. Today's miracle stories. Church miracle stories. We spend decades sometimes researching whether or not something is a miracle, whether something happened, whether it was an apparition, a Eucharistic miracle, and then as soon as we find out, yep, it is, we don't talk about it again. I don't get it. But it seems to be the way we do things. So what are we being shown here? When you walk into a church, when you walk into a Catholic church, and the only miracle that we're told of is that bread turns into Jesus, yeah, right. Sure it does. You can go on YouTube, you can see all this stuff on YouTube. And this is not criticizing any church or any priest. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about there's a mentality here. There's a mentality that everything is, God's pretty exciting out there. It's pretty exciting. We come in here and we're told that's Jesus, and there's this invisibility cloak and there's nothing underneath. It's floating by itself. It's not connected to anything. Do you see how it used to be connected? This was just one more miracle. This is the source and summit of them all. This is the most important of them all. And before there was this mountain of miracles, everyone could see they lived it. It's still there. That mountain of miracles is still there. The miracles are still happening. You pray, it affects people's health. Angels, did your angel retire and go to Florida? Are they living in the villages? No, they're right here. Every single one of you has an angel. Some of you have angel stories, don't you? I know you do because I interview you people. There are miracles everywhere happen. This is still happening. As it was in the beginning, is now, is still happening. But for some reason, we've let it get away. And so why should I, casual, sleepwalking Catholic, believe I walk in and the only thing I hear is that's Jesus? Based on what? Based on what? And now get this, in case you don't know this one. This tops it all. When they now check the blood in these Eucharistic miracles, and the DNA, you know, you have chromosomes. You're either an XX or an XY, right? You know? So they check it. What do they find? X. They find X. They find roots to mom. They find mom. They can't find dad. It's the Annunciation. It's exactly as we learn it. When Mary, overshadowed by the Holy Spirit, dad is up there. But when they look at the blood, they see mom, but they can't find dad. It is what we have been told is true. And we have that. What a gift. What a gift to the church this is. What a gift that science is on our side, guys. What a gift this is to the church. What a gift it is to every priest and deacon who stands at the pulpit. And when he's talking about the Annunciation and the overshadowing, and he says, by the way, do you know that scientific testing shows that the blood has a mom, but there's no dad? If you tell a congregation that, they're going to be blown away because they've never heard it before. Have they? We don't even need faith. Science is on ours. But we've got to tell people it's underneath that invisibility cloak. It's part of the is now that is under wraps, and why people don't believe. Because we're not telling them the is now, and it's dramatic right now. It's dramatic. We just have to know what it is. We just need to take that invisibility cloak off so that Jesus behind me here isn't floating in space. He's standing there on a mountain of miracles that are going on all around us right now. A mountain.
Ever since I saw you, I was like, I've been watching Our Lady of Guadalupe and all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this is wild. Like, how is this not more vocalized? Why can't we have a weekly, like a second gathering or something where we just meet and share stories and talk about things like this? You know, it's like, it's always a special event that like you coming to have, you know, your talk and stuff. It's never like a reoccurring thing to help people see how he can talk to you, you know? It's just interesting because I'm sure just within that group that we had there that Tuesday, I'm sure there was a ton of stories right in that room.
Guaranteed. In fact, a lot of people came up and gave me names and numbers that I have to get back to. Let's pause right about here. Then more with Sarah here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God. I have to tell you that when I hear from the Sarahs of the world who come to a talk and, a light bulb goes on and they kind of see where God is in their life, and a ghost story becomes, no, it's a God story, and just how God is still here. The is now, as it was in the beginning, is now. That is so important to evangelization. And in fact, let me direct you towards another website too. If, this Trapper Jack guy, he speaks so much more gooder in person. I'm just telling you. Go to trapperjackspeaks.com and you can see a little clip, a video clip of some of the stuff he does. Perhaps Trapper would be just a fine choice for an upcoming event that you're a part of. Down the road a bit or soon, whatever. So that's trapperjackspeaks.com for more information about Trapper the speaker. We'll get back to Trapper the podcaster in just a moment here. But thank you so much, Alicia Compton. Alicia has joined the Patreon family and helps support what we do. Thank you so much, Alicia. We thank you so much for your financial support, for listening. First and foremost, for listening. You truly do make our day.
You made my day, Trapper. You changed my life with the stories that you share, and knowing that, your belief in these stories and it's spreading throughout, hopefully the world, because I know that I'm sharing. You got to listen to this podcast. It changed my life. Hoping that, that the Spirit of the Lord, ignites again, because we need it so bad in this world. And when one spark lights another spark, there's no stopping him. So you are in my prayers, dear sir.
Thank you. And just added you to mine. Thanks, Linda. If you'd like to join the family as well, come to this episode and just click your way through to patreon.com. Or you can go there directly, patreon.com, and search for Trapper Jack. Thank you so much for fueling what we do with your support and, of course, with your stories as well. Back to Sarah here on Touched by Heaven, Everyday Encounters with God.
The whole evening was kind of what church, I feel, should be, even just with Father Max and things, how it was like we were walking out and he's like, "You're coming down to the community room after, right? You're coming?" And he gave us these big hugs that were just so tight, and so we're like, "Okay, let's go down. We don't really know many people here, but let's go." By the end of the night, they're like, "Gosh, I feel like we were a part of everything, I feel like we were part of the community and members." And it was just so warm and welcoming. And I was just like, yes, this is how I picture God's community.
What's our takeaway, Sarah?
Our takeaway. I think for me, it's just that God is good and I need to open my eyes and my ears to the way he's talking to me every day and that I don't recognize. Stop calling them coincidences, because they're not.
Amen. Thanks, Sarah. Appreciate the God story, not ghost story, God story. Appreciate that so much, and for coming out to the talk. And again, go to trapperjackspeaks.com if Trapper could help you out sometime down the road here, an event that you happen to be a part of. trapperjackspeaks.com. If you'd like to, you have a story for Touched by Heaven? Then come here, touchedbyheaven.net. Love to hear your angel encounter, prophetic dream, vision, near-death experience, whatever it happens to be. Love to hear your story. Thanks for keeping us a 5-star podcast, too, by your ratings and reviews. I got all kinds of reasons to thank you. I'm going to thank you in advance for coming here next week for the new episode. The one, whatever it's going to be. Prophetically, do I know what it is yet? Oh, it's really good. Oh, I can see it. Yeah, there you are, listening to the Touched by Heaven podcast with Trapper Jack. It's about a tour guide in Rome, and she's walking around, and she delivers this great line.
Well, I came home to the Vatican today, and